Need custom beer labels fast? At InTouch Labels and Packaging, we deliver industry-leading 3-day turnaround on every order, regardless of quantity. We carry a wide assortment of die-cut templates in standard and custom shapes and sizes. With a combination of top-of-the-line machines and experienced operators, InTouch can pump out an astonishing quantity of custom labels quickly. Our competitive pricing means you get top quality labels without breaking the bank. Need help? Our top tier customer service is here to assist you every step of the way. So why wait? Get your custom labels with lightning fast 3-day turnaround and unbeatable service at InTouch Labels and Packaging, where your brand gets the attention it deserves.
Hey everybody, you did it. You made it through our spring virtual conference. We appreciate you and couldn't do this without you. Huge thanks to all of our wonderful speakers who spoke the past couple days and all of our sponsors like Small Batch Standard and InTouch Labels. While I love these virtual events, the next opportunity you have to join CBP in person, we're hosting a welcome party at the Craft Brewers Conference on April 28th. And next we'll be in Charlotte, North Carolina for our next CBP Connects this June 9th, 10th, and 11th. But we're here now with Andrew Burman from the Other Half. Andrew, I'm excited to talk to you today. We had the opportunity to be on a great panel in 2023 at the New York State Brewers Conference, which was fantastic. But this is going to be a fun look about your time in the industry. So welcome. It's great to see you again.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. Good to be here. And I can't believe that was 2023. I really thought it was last year. So
it feels like forever ago. I mean, it's hard to say that 2024 was last year. I haven't still wrapped my head that we're in 2025.
Yeah. I know.
So you all, 11 years of Other Half Brewing. Tell me in a nutshell what you do at Other Half. We're going to dive into a lot of topics, but I want to give that brief overview for you to intro yourself.
Sure. I'm Andrew Burman. I'm the basic COO, CEO of the of Other Half Brewing. I take care of making sure everything sort of happens. My team makes sure that everything from the grain arrives on time till the beer is picked up and out to distribution, tap rooms. I'm basically sort of the grease and the push that makes things sort of happen, and where we need a little extra help. So it's a fun job. Every day is a little different. But what we've learned in the last couple of years is that you need to keep pushing, and you need to keep evolving and change who you are. The pandemic changed the basics of drinking for a lot of people, and so I think my main job is to make sure that we're meeting the demands and making sure that we're headed in the right direction.
And I've got questions. But first, did you think you'd be running a brewery these days? Or when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I was a chef. I went to culinary school for about 15 years. I worked in kitchens for about 15 years, about 32-ish. I was like, I don't know if I'm able to do this when I'm 55. So I tried to figure out what was next. And one of my business partners, Matt Monahan, and I were cooking together, and we were just trying to figure out what's next. And we came up with some zany ideas, and somehow this one stuck. We did some dinners together. And, I think it's really interesting. A lot of the stuff I do on a daily basis is very reminiscent of a chef, like handling multiple things. You're ordering, you're cooking, you're being creative, you're being strategic. You're also being operational. So it did, those 15 years did lend a lot to what we did, to what we do every day here.
Did you ever think that food would become a part of the Other Half's business model?
It was supposed to be at the beginning, and then we realized we can make a lot more money selling beer. So we sort of got away from it, and then actually now we're trying to lean in a little bit more. So we're just finishing up our kitchens in Canandaigua. We have a full kitchen in Buffalo, food truck in Bloomfield, full kitchen in Philadelphia. So it's really partnering with the great places and doing what we can to make it as best as we can.
So for the kitchens you have, is a third party running them, or are they run by Other Half themselves?
We're all run by Other Half. So I have 2 chefs upstate, a chef in Philadelphia. And, the hard part now is trying to figure out what is Other Half's take on food. You have one location, you're like, you can do whatever you want. Now with 3 locations, you got to sort of be like, okay, this is what we are. This is what we do. This is what we can do well. And let's get it to our consumers as best as possible. That's been a big learning curve. And also, being a chef background, you're sort of like, nobody wants that. People just want burgers, wings, and French fries and pizza. Like, don't make it fancy. Like,
working the basic burgers, French fries, pizza, or is there any other unique items that you're seeing?
Right now we're working on some pizza concepts for our Buffalo location. Some sort of, I love tavern style pizza, like that sort of cracker thin Connecticut, Chicago style. So we're working on that right now, and then The hard part is in Philly, we have a team of great cooks and a great chef that's, has some, leanings toward a lot of them are immigrants from Mexico. And they're like, hey man, do you mind if we do this? And I'm like, hey, that's great. Just send me a menu and you want to do it. It's leaning into the people, what they're excited about, because what we've learned is that if someone else is excited about it, you can show that it really does help in the product. There's a help, whether it's beer or food.
Now, with food as part of your model these days at many of your locations, how is it impacting the taproom experience? Obviously, people are craving the food, but are you seeing guests hang longer? What happy accidents are coming from
That's
it?
the question. I think what I think the pandemic has taken away was people coming in for one drink and then going somewhere else. I think a lot of people want to go to one place. They want a one-stop shop a little bit. They want to make sure that they're having food, they're having a full experience. They want a place where their kids can play. They want a place that they can sit for a little bit, have 2 drinks, have some food, and not worry about going to the next place or the next place. One of the questions we talked about before, and it's like our demographic was 35 when we started, and now they're 45. So, now they have 2 kids and now they can't get out on a Saturday morning to pick up cans. So how are we going to get it to them? How are we going to change that experience? And that's a lot of our learnings and growth has been in that area. And then on the same token, how do you garner more people coming in and different people coming in? So it's been an interesting time.
So let's dive into getting more people in first, and we'll kind of dive into the trends that are showing people aren't coming in as much. So if we're getting new guests and new audiences to the Other Half locations, what are you all doing?
Well, I think we're still learning, and that's one big thing. But I think when we took a step back, what we really tried to decide is what can we do that separates us from other people? What are our advantages as a brewery? What are our concepts that make it better? And what can we offer to make a full, more holistic offering? Whether that's food or food truck, being more family friendly, like putting in a playground if we need to, or making sure we have cocktails, or making sure we have other beverages. We have wine now, we have coffee, we have a Delta 9 product that's very popular for us. So it's sort of trying to. The hard part is at one side, you don't want to be a jack of many trades and master of none, and you're doing a bunch of stuff that you're middling at. On the other side is that you're so laser focused on double IPAs that everyone's like, well, I don't really want to go there that much. I can't drive there. I can't sit there that long. I can have one beer and then I go home. So, it's trying to marry what people know us for and what they expect, but also to make sure that they're happy with the other things they may need there.
And you all have leaned in pretty strongly to the cocktails. Talk to us a little bit about, what you've experimented with, how you're producing them, and the results you're seeing by adding cocktails to the menus.
Yeah, cocktails have been great for us, especially draft cocktails. We've a couple people on staff that love cocktails and really have come from a background of that. So draft cocktails have been really good. The Aperol Spritz has been amazing for us. We put that on draft, and we have to actually make it in one of our bright tanks. We move so much of it. So it's barrels of it, which is great. It's stuff like that. And then on top of it, it's making it, some locations are a little bit more bespoke. Our Rockefeller Center location is nicer. It's a well-maintained bar, great whiskey, great mezcal, great tequila selections that people are impressed with and happy with. And then also having that cocktail element of it. The hard part is that, just like brewing, everyone wants to be creative and everyone wants a recipe have. So all of a sudden we have 25 unique drinks from 4 locations. And you're like, all right, team, let's whittle this down. There'll be 5 seasonal cocktails. Here they are. Here are the distributors that they come with. Here's what we can do. And if you want to have some creativity, here are 2 that you can run as weekly or monthly specials as well on top of it. We try to give them some creativity, but we also know that there is some efficiency to scale that we really need to take advantage of.
So speaking about cocktails to start, what initially led to this expansion? Was it you all realizing you had to innovate? Was it consumers asking? And how do you really think about which ones to introduce?
It was a little bit of everything, as I was saying. I think that when we opened, the cocktails really started coming along when we started doing our Domino Park location, our Rockefeller Center locations that opened pretty close together. We realized we couldn't just put a sign out front saying we're Other Half and people would show up with nothing. Domino Park's directly on the East River. It is the first place to get a drink when you're coming off of the park. So it didn't really matter that we were Other Half or we were just a bar. So we had to have a better offering. Rockefeller Center just was in the center of Manhattan. It was the heart of the city. It is the heart of the city. And what we learned was that people coming in wanted a beer, but their coworker or their friend might want something else. And so that really spurred us to start thinking about, okay, what are we doing, what are we doing here? How can we help this out? And this is, also coupled with a pandemic, also coupled with, the falling in craft a little bit. So it was what we can do to have more robust offerings and have more people happy with us.
At about what time? I mean, you mentioned the pandemic, but was it, around the pandemic that all of this was happening, or at what point in time were you realizing? Yeah.
It was like about 2020, beginning of 2021, 2021 was the change in, our sales and opening up the tap rooms again and having things like that really changed how we do business.
And you mentioned your Domino Park location. People just come in to get a drink, but obviously the other half story and everything that you do is a really important part of the experience. So when you have that first time guest who just wants something to drink, how are you telling your story during those interactions?
That's something that we struggle with at all locations. How do you make someone feel seen and heard and taken care of when you have 20 people behind them, or their first time in Buffalo or their first time wherever? And I think that's one thing that a craft beer on the whole has to really work on. Is like how do you make someone's experience as good as possible throughout? And I think that's one thing that we really struggle with, to be honest, at times, is how do you make sure that someone that's coming into Bloomfield has a great experience, but maybe that's their second location they've been to at Other Half, and they've been to Buffalo before and they have a different experience. But how can you make sure it's different experiences, but a great experience both times, and something that they'll talk about? And I think that's where a lot of our training comes in, and a lot of our onboarding has really become more robust and stronger. Is that we really need, you need to have people that care about your brand. 8 years ago, it was me and 4 people. We talked to everybody every single day. And now we're about 180, 200 people. And it's like, okay, how is that person going to be an ambassador for me? Not only the company, but my passion and the reason why we opened up this brewery and why we're here. And I think that's something that's really, really difficult. And I think craft beers, because we're sort of like a very small mom and pop mindset at times, the onboarding is just like, oh, it's a friend of a friend. Come on in. It's not like, okay, here's our handbook. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. What have you been bartending before? Oh, do you like craft beer? I think that's really, really important. And it's really shown itself in the last couple of years about how to get people going well.
So when's the last time you've actually worked behind the bar?
I think at the anniversary party, I pulled a couple beers, but I gave up that life a long time ago.
A celebrity appearance, suppose.
Exactly.
So, when you have people and you use the word onboarding, what does that process look like? I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into that, because, just because someone's worked in beer before or worked in hospitality doesn't mean they know the other half way. Like if I were to train with Other Half, what's a handful of things you want me to take away from my first day on the job?
Well, hopefully by the first day of job, you've already had you're following a bartender at that point in time. You've had 2 or 3 interviews with managers, and sometimes me, sometimes ownership, sometimes definitely our HR 1 or 2 times. And so there's a definite process to get in. But when you're there, we want you to learn about what we are, in a way, like who we are, like 2 sentences about what Other Half is and what we stand for, what we do well. Hey, a snippet for the customers. Hey, I've only worked here for 1 day, but what people come in, what's your favorite IPA? That's literally the first thing they say. What's your favorite IPA? And I think it's really difficult because the bartenders hear that 500 times a day for 365 days a year. So it's really difficult. And I'm like, just give them one answer. Right now, I love the All Citra. It's our new hops right now, or it's our new beer Tall Kiwi. It's our New Zealand hops just came in. They're great. The Motueka really shines in this. Like, give people talking points. And I think, more than anything, whether you're fast or whether you're smiling, whatever, the biggest thing is just your passion. Showing that you care is something that we really, really try to emphasize. And to be honest, are trying to emphasize that even more. If that's one thing you as a takeaway, as a small craft brewery listening to this, is that, onboarding is really, really important. We also have like a 50-page onboarding handbook, and will everybody read it? No, but it's nice to have it. If you have some time, maybe you can make a 2-page one. Just like it's one is like rules, regulations, your PTO, your healthcare, all that stuff, and another book we have that is our brewing process, why we're different, our hops, tasting profiles, what are some of our most famous beers, where can you see us, what events we're going to soon, stuff like that. And I think we're even trying to get into after your first day is how can we continue that communication? How can me or my partner Sam, who's our brewmaster, talk to those employees and get that. We're making a new series of beers, or we're making a new hop duo beer, or whatever it is. How can we get the information that we're passionate about to them? And I think we do an okay to pretty shitty job at that at times, but how can we do that better? And that's something we're really trying to evolve as we continue this sort of 2025.
I mean, you've got 10 locations, management across each. I imagine a lot of it falls on the on-site, like taproom managers or similar positions, to kind of engage with these team members. Are they having regular meetings? Are they having pre-shift meetings? What does that look like with regard to their responsibilities to engage?
Yeah, we have. It's mandatory that everybody has a monthly meeting, and then that's with the whole staff, each tap room, and then it's also they have to have meetings weekly with their managers. So we really try to push. There's a weekly email that goes out about what beers are coming out, anything to note. But it's so multi-pronged here. It's not only is it those internal communications. It's okay, cool. What's going on Instagram? What's going to be put up here? What is there a collaborator coming through? Is there some food special? So it's getting all of that information into a single place has become more difficult as we get bigger, but it does shine a light on it, which means that you have the opportunity to fix it. And I think that's where we are right now.
So just talking about your team for a minute, and you talked about your 50-page handbook. Like, what was going through your mind? What did you think when someone said, Andrew and your co-founders, I think you need this 50-page handbook? Because I imagine it might not have been something thought of internally, or was it something you all realized you needed to do?
We about year 3 or 4, we started having an HR consultant help out with us. She eventually came on full-time, Leah Regal. She's amazing. And she has been our director of HR for the last, I think it's been like 6 years now. And she was like, you need to do this. You need to have this. This isn't for like, it's just protecting you. Like, you have to protect the business because stuff does happen. I think that's something, we all see, we all get lawsuits. Somebody trips and falls. Someone does this, someone does that. Someone says the wrong thing or whatever it is. Like, you have to protect you, not only yourselves, but you have to protect the company. And that's what we really learned, is that you having that manual helps and sets expectations that you're a professional company, that it's not just you making willy-nilly decisions about like, oh yeah, you get this PTO or you get that, or I have a handshake agreement with that. It puts everything in paper. Like, this is how much PTO you get year 1. This is what your healthcare is. This is what, what perks you have. Like, how many breweries are like, oh, well, I get 50% off a t-shirt. You're like, is that what you get? Is that written somewhere? Like, who rings that in? Who tells you that? And I think, it's like we have boot stipends for our brewers and our drivers. We have, credit cards for to get gas. And I think all those little things you got to put into a place. And that's what really we learned, so that it was for protecting the company, but it was also for the education of that consumer. So they knew the customer, the employees, so they knew where to look. And I think that's been really helpful.
And as you know, a lot of small breweries don't have HR people. They don't have Leahs on their team. What would you recommend for them if they focus on one HR task right now? Would there be a specific thing that you would say they need to do right now? And would it be maybe an employee handbook? Would it be these weekly meetings? Is there anything that you found really valuable from the HR side?
I think whatever is important to you is most likely really important to your employees. If it's a policy for merch or healthcare or making sure that your brewer staff is taken care of, or your delivery, whatever it might be. I think everybody knows that like there's a policy that needs to be in place for this or that in their own brewery or their own bar, to be honest, or whatever it might be. I think that's important. And it's also think what would be nice to them. We really have tried to figure out like how to give back to our employees. Like, what would they like? Giving people money is really nice, and we try to do that well. But it's also like, what would you guys like a sweatshirt for something, or like just putting everything in, codifying it really, really helps.
How are you finding out what individual employees want, or what motivates them?
Motivating employees and what they want is I think one of the harder things that we've had to deal with. I think obviously as a tap room, if we're tap room focused, I think money is one of the bigger things, but also their standard of living, what they're looking for. Are they looking for 40 hours? Or are they looking for 32? Or are they looking for 24? Whatever it might be. Having conversations like that and setting expectations are constantly what we have to do. It's also about like what the brewers want. A lot of brewers are like, oh, I want to make a recipe. And we're like, well, okay, but that not just I want to make a recipe, or they like, I just want a nicer ladder. You're like, okay. I think it's just having that open communication and making sure that your teams have open communications, because you don't want every person just coming right to me or to my partners. What you want is a great leadership structure so they know where to look. Like a lot of that handbook is just like, okay, who do I report to and who is responsible for making sure the centrifuge gets fixed? Like things like that are just important.
So I'm currently rereading Blitz Scaling by Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of like LinkedIn and PayPal and quite a few other companies. And it doesn't fully apply to the beer industry, but one thing he mentions is like when you're in startup mode, you're wearing so many different hats as you've alluded to, but then now you magically have 10 locations in multiple states. Like what are a couple skills you've learned over the years, and what are a couple things you've realized you don't like to do?
Oh, there's lots I don't like to do.
Tell me about it, Andrew.
But I think I'll start with the positives. I think what we really learned is that, a lot of like are just something like 80-20 rules that we sort of talk about. We have some leadership and team building things that we do on a monthly basis, but a rule is, focusing 80% of your effort on what is important, and try to take that 20, which is not as important. Really focusing on what can grow the business. Taking a step back and be like, not looking at what can be like 10-fold increase, but what can be 100-fold increase. Like what can you really put your effort to make the company better and bigger, is a lot of what I focus on. I think that's one of the skills that we've had to pick up, is like, you have to take a step back to see where the holes are, the white spaces. One quote that I always use is that you can't work on your business while you're working in your business. And a lot of craft breweries, you're brewing a beer, and then you're trying to set a delivery schedule, and then you're trying to set a taproom schedule, and then you might be tending bar on weekends, and it's just an impossible task. You're never going to get bigger than what you are, until you really sort of take a step back and realize, okay, shit, like I if I want to make more beer, what do I need to do? And it's like, okay, cool, I need sales. I need to get this beer out. I can make more beer, but can I sell more beer? Talking to distributors, having great relationships with that. I think that it's what I focus on a lot, every day. What I don't like doing, I don't like a lot of the legal stuff. Contracts I do not like. My brother, who's our CFO, handles a lot of that stuff. A lot of like I don't like negotiating. A lot of like the canned contracts and things like that. I'm just like, just pay us a fair price. I'll pay you a fair price. Just ask the right one. And my brother's like, no. Let's go after this a little bit. And so it's, you have to, I don't have that sort of personality to keep doing that.
Were those tasks you previously had under your, responsibilities? Or is there anything that you were responsible
yes
for
and no.
that you kind of realized, I need to pass this off? Like as you grew?
A lot of the stuff is naturally come off. I still deal with a lot of front of house stuff, but I actually like the front of house stuff. So I purposely, I don't deal with like much at all of the brewing things. And I let other, whether it's grain forecasting, anything, I don't deal with any of that stuff. I'm like, I don't have the mind for it. I don't want to do it. We have a brewing director who takes care of it and does an amazing job. Scheduling people, like stuff like that, like naturally did it. But once we started getting taproom managers and better leadership, it was much easier to sort of like, here are the reins, have at it. So it's been good. And then, like a POS sort of stuff. I have a woman on my team, Joy, who absolutely loves getting information and having systems. And so she does an amazing job with like our POS systems and making sure that goes. Cause there's a lot of minutia and a lot of like attention to detail that I don't have, that you need at this size.
So let's go back to like launching a new product. When you kind of step away from the business and just kind of think about what you all need to be doing versus kind of getting stuck in it, you and your management team, how are you looking at criteria for what we're going to launch next? Like when you're doing cocktails, I'm sure you're looking at data from somewhere, or is there a time when you're like, you know what? I have a good hunch about this. I think we should do it. Let's give it a shot. Like what's the balance there, and how are you kind of thinking?
Cocktails are a little fly by our seat of pants because we just knew we needed them. But like a new beer series is a much more thought out process. We have a beer called like Hop Duos.
What is that?
It's a beer that we make that is 2 hops, hence the duo, and it is 6.5%. And so we have a juice series that's called Juice Pile or Juice Grind. It's all sporty themes with juice and their cartoon characters. What we did was look at our white space, see where we don't have stuff. And we were lagging in our 6.5% beers. We actually didn't have that many of them. So we had to say, okay, cool. We're going to put 2 series in this hole. We're going to make sure that they're bright, they're graphic, they're attention grabbing, they're good labels. So, I think that those things are very thought out. And that's when we're talking, sales to tap rooms to this, that we're talking to a lot of different teams to see where that hole is. And it takes us a little bit to identify it. And then it takes us a pretty long while to figure out what we want to do with it. That same thing we're sort of doing a lager exploration right now where, okay, cool. What does it mean to be a craft brewery that makes lager? We were the first time ever we have excess capacity so we can make a little bit of lager. And we're sort of, looking internally at what we think, what is Other Half's version of a lager? And I think that's something that we really started to do is how we can make whatever product we come out next, what's our take on it? What's our spin? What makes it an Other Half product? And so I think that's what we've really been focusing on and trying to do a great job on. And we've been mildly successful. Obviously, we make some duds, but we've been pretty good about.
Tell us about one of those duds. What have you tried that really just did not hit?
The Hop Duo's first iteration was called Equal Parts, and literally within 12 hours, we got a cease and desist from Equal Parts Brewing, and we're just should have definitely done a research on that. Stuff like that happens where you the best of intentions, you're trying the best, and you just literally step on somebody's toes. You're I'm really sorry about that.
You moved a little too fast, I guess.
Yeah. And but you learn, you live and learn. And so I think stuff like that is where we make most of our mistakes. So it might be a creative mistake, or it might be something with a recipe. We'll put a New Zealand hop that we have 400 pounds of. And that's enough for 3 beers. And you're oh, this isn't a year-round beer. You're no, it's not. We can't do that. Can't do that. So that's happened more than I like to admit.
What's something you've launched that you really didn't have high hopes for that surprised you, whether in the taproom or market?
I think I'll answer the opposite. The stouts are interesting. We were doing huge amounts of stouts during the pandemic, and that sort of has taken a pull back. They're still great products, but they're definitely not as robust as they once were. So that's been an interesting take back. I think something that we, I don't know. I have to think about that more.
No, it's all good. Let's kind of talk about your trajectory as a brewery. I mean, you all were known as a hype brewery, and now you're in distribution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How did that occur, and when did you realize, oh shit, I need to have my beer out in the market?
It was pandemic when all of a sudden we had, thousands of cases that were meant to be sold that had no home. And that really evolved our business. So overnight we went from, having thousands of people come to our tap rooms every week to none. And so since then we evolved to our great online shipping business. It evolved into getting beer, into having great distribution partners, which I think is unbelievably important. People in distribution aren't just, you don't just sign a contract and let them be. It's a constant conversation. And I think that's something that we've really, really learned about. And that's really maintained us. We work with great distributors that treat our product well. And, it's having a conversation, be I don't want somebody to take 10 cases of this and jack it up to $28 a 4-pack. I want this to be at $22 a 4-pack, $20 a 4-pack, and I want them to take 4 cases, and I want them to take it again next month. And I think that's something that we've really tried to work with. Getting into distribution was an overnight decision that was forced upon us, but to make it successful has taken years. And I also would say one thing we really learned is having a great salesperson. We have a guy, Billy Sabia, who comes from from Budweiser. And, I never would have said, 10 years ago, oh, we need an AB guy, but sometimes you do. Sometimes you need somebody that comes from that structure and knows how to talk the talk. There's definitely ABPs and IUIs or IBP, whatever, all these acronyms. And you're I don't know what any of those are. And that's one thing, like we said, what have you outsourced or what I do? That sales stuff I used to be more involved with when it was, in the city and stuff. But once it gets out of the city, you're like, I don't speak this language. I can't be in a meeting with all these people. I can definitely shake hands, but I can't speak eloquently on it. And so I think that's really where we've shown having a great relationship with our distributors, but also having a great team in-house that is willing to help and really knows the way around.
When you first, realized you had lots of cases building up in the brewery, you needed to get them out in the market. Was it a hard pill to swallow? I know you all wanted income coming in, but it had been your model for quite some time for people to drink it on site, come away with lots of cases. What was going through you and the other co-founders' minds when you had to accept that this is who we got to be now?
Well, that's the hardest part, is that there wasn't anybody else around. It was the pandemic. So you're just like literally staring. It was me and a couple guys in the office, and we're like, all right, man, we got to figure this out. I think, we always distributed. So we're kind of unlike other craft beer breweries that only did direct to consumer from day one. We weren't actually 11 years ago, you couldn't serve beer to consumers out of the tap rooms. So you weren't allowed to have tap rooms in New York State. So we always had, we were always a distribution brewery to start with. When we started canning, people just showed up and we're like, oh, that's interesting. That's great. And I think that's where we've really, it took a step back. We're like, oh shit, like we're just going back to our roots. Like, this is what we were, this is what we were built for. This is what our business plan said. We got incredibly lucky that people really cared about our beer in cans and really wanted double IPAs and wanted to do great stuff and really liked what we were doing, our branding and everything in our beer. But it wasn't really like a hard choice being like, we're completely changing who we are. We always had a distribution team. We always had some distribution partnerships. But this was like the first time when we like really looked at everybody around being like, okay, we're together on this.
I mean, at this point in time, people can order your beer off your website. So
Yep.
What have you seen by making your beer more accessible? How has it changed your audience? How has it changed,
Well, going back to that first point that we had, you said, how are you getting people in the tap room? I'm like, well, if I'm not getting them in the tap room, how am I going to get to them? And that's the whole question of all craft beers. How are you going to get your beer into someone's hand? And our answers are, I'm going to put it in Wegmans. I'm going to ship it to them. I mean, however they want it, I will probably get it to them. You know what I mean? And I think that's where the mentality is. The Other Half's always been a little bit more scrappy than other places. We kind of like, our beer is great and we want to get it in your hand, and we don't want that barrier to entry to be high at all. Some people say you got to drive out to the middle of nowhere to pick up this beer. And you're like, no, I want this beer. I have to do this stuff this weekend. I want to order it. I want it at my house. I'll pay a premium for it, but I just don't want to deal with it. I love it. And so I think that's where we took a hard look. And it's like, how do you get it there? You might not be able to get everything at your local, bottle shop, but you can get some stuff. And then hopefully you're getting some stuff. And then you're like, oh shit, I can get like the sort of stuff that's a little more niche delivered right to me. Or shit, the really, really stuff that doesn't go anywhere, I have to go grab it. And, we're playing a little bit against ourselves a bit, but we really want people to, to come and get it. And we really want to get it to people.
Will we ever see Other Half in convenience stores?
We are in some bodegas, so I don't know if you consider that a convenience store, but we are definitely the New York bodega scene. We started putting some beer in the last couple months. It's successful. Convenience stores is a tough one. Like, I don't know, we are in some 7-Elevens, but we're not like in grab and goes yet, and we're not in 19.2s yet.
Yeah, that was my next question. If that's the format you've looked at.
Well, what we've learned is that once you leave 16-ounce cans, your margins are different, your life's different, and you're not going back. So we're very hesitant about putting our beer in other format. I mean, it's hard to say like, oh, if the Yankees call and they're like, hey, can you do a beer for us and put it in 19.2s? And you're like, pinstripe blue? Sure, I got you. Like, I'll be there tomorrow. So I think it's one of those things that we know we're going to have to evolve that opinion, but right now we're happy with where we are.
So unfortunately, the Yankees haven't given you the call to the big leagues yet. But do you have any unique partnerships that you just think are really fun and you enjoy being part of?
I think that's something that we've really worked on and are truly working on, is who we are as a brand and who we want to partner with as we move forward. We have a really cool we have a collab coming out with Mr. Softy, which is like a New York staple, like those soft ice cream trucks that are everywhere. We're doing some fun things with them. I think we're constantly trying to figure out what is next for craft beer and what we want to do and where we want to go. I think that those partnerships are really awesome to tell a story about yourself and put a little shine on who you are as a brand. And that's some, in 2025, that's really, really important to give people and your audience to an opportunity to see who you are and what you believe in and what you want. And I think that's where we're trying to get to as we go.
What's the Mr. Softy beer?
That one is TBD. There's going to be a couple, I think. So we're obviously a stout, and then we're looking at a smoothie sour as well, but we're looking at some other fun stuff to do as well.
No, I'm excited to see what you do. And like a prior conversation, you talked about how taproom traffic on the weekends is declining. Do you think this is a short-term trend, long-term trend? What are your thoughts there on that edge of traffic?
Well, I was having a conversation with GMs today, and last week was really great for us. And I'm like, it's nice that the sun coming out gives us a 20% increase. I'm interested to see now that the winter hopefully is over and the weather's breaking, what post-election 2025 sort of looks like. And I think that's where, we're saying, I think taproom traffic will never be for Other Half what it was. We will never have a line of 1,000 people again. We will never sell through like 1,000 cases, 2,000 cases of beer on a weekend. I wish they were coming back, but I don't think that's ever coming back. But what we do have is try to make that great experience and make people, happy and come back. They might not come back tomorrow, but hopefully come back in a month or two and they bring their friend. And I think that's what we're shooting for.
And I know you all have leaned into events as well. What's the event program at your tap rooms look like? What are you seeing success with? How organized is it? Private versus public?
Very, 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 very organized. We use some back-end systems to help us do that. But I think what's really been helpful is having GMs who are, and staff that are ingrained in the community. So there might be Domino Park does a great vet partnership. So it's a vet sponsors a happy hour, and it's like Yappy Hour. And so everybody comes from like 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 on Fridays. It'll be somewhere between 50 and 150 people or so, and dogs and people are great. And like, I think that's where it's like, what is your local community thing? Like we've done some partnerships with some of the, dispensaries as well. We're not where they're selling stuff, but stuff where we sort of have a like-minded audience. And sort of how do you get people in and the trivias and things like that. I'm a little less, the trivias do well for us, but they're not necessarily our consumer. They're much more of like people who love this and come in, drink one beer and leave. But it's really working with that Venn diagram of what our consumers are, what our staff loves, and what we can have for great partnerships in that area.
So you mentioned trivia is not necessarily what your audience is craving. What is your audience craving? Are there unique events they're asking for that you've heard them, mention to your team that you've kind of implemented?
I think it could be as simple as stuff like food. They love, like Center Street doesn't have a kitchen, but they love great food pop-ups, and we love working with small vendors that have a nice little following, and I think that's a great thing that they ask for. Sometimes they're just asking to have, since we have such great reach as Other Half, they're asking like, hey, can you do a tap takeover with X people, or can you get some Great Notion, Monkish, and Green Sheet kegs? Bring the West Coast here. Like, okay, cool. Like stuff like that is always a pretty easy lift, but really speaks to our audience to get them something that they can't get anywhere else.
And your audience a few years ago is different than it was now. Those people waiting in lines, they've aged up a little bit. They might have families. How do those, let's say, craft beer purists feel about where you are now? And what have you done to make them still crave Other Half?
I don't know. I try to stay off Reddit and not know. But, I think it's just stay authentic. I think it's an overused word a little bit, but stay who we are. We still put as I said, we still put our lens of Other Half through things and how we do it. And I think that's one really important step is whatever brewery you are, staying true to what you believe and what you want, what your handbook says, and what you have to evolve, and what's your mission. And I think if you stay true to those, your consumers are going to always appreciate that, and always move with you.
So looking at your 10 locations, I'd love to kind of talk about, literally growing from one spot as a startup to 10 places all across the East Coast. It's a different type of business to run. So when you start somewhere, you know your community, you know everybody coming in probably on a first name basis because you're behind the bar. So how do you customize the experience in each market that you're in to once again use that word authentic, but build authentic relationships everywhere Other Half is?
Well, I think that it comes a lot from training, and it comes a lot of hiring the right people, and it comes a lot of people that have like sort of like their other half mentality. But what is their other half? What are they bringing to the table? Buffalo, I think, is a great example. They have a great staff. They have a really caring staff. We have a coffee shop in there, which we've never had before. And I think we have a small coffee brand called Cloud Cover. That's my partner Sam's like baby, who loves it, loves coffee and really wants to embrace it. And so we started, it's at the base of a large, like office building. So there's a need for it and a want. So I think that's one thing that we've really taken, is sort of take a step back and be like, what do they want? How can they have that version of Other Half, while staying true to yourself, and not, I think that's just it's just, I'll say it is like, how do you just keep that lens of like, how do you stay true to yourself? And, sometimes I will say it doesn't work as well as I want it to. It doesn't have that vibe that you want it to. But then it's having faith in your team and yourself to be like, oh shit, that's not okay. Like, how can we fix it? And I think that's where, you have to be really quick to, as a leadership and ownership, you have to be quick to be like, this doesn't feel right. How do I change this? And I think that's where a lot of, information lies in your own self, is when you're like, it's just the gut check doesn't work.
Going into these new markets, are there any lessons learned where you tried something and you realized you didn't read the room correctly and had to, just correct it? Any specific examples that you can think of? And these are the things we try not to remember sometimes.
Well, no, I mean, I remember them all. I feel like all I do is make mistakes, so it's hard to pinpoint one that was different. I think DC has been an interesting one, because Ivy City was gentrifying. Where we are in Northeast DC was gentrifying before the pandemic. We signed that agreement before the pandemic. It's been a lot of hard lessons learned there. It's a very big space. It's a very different audience. It's not like directly in the city. The city hasn't grown as thought of together. There were supposed to be more high rises coming out there, and what we thought there'd be, 10,000 people living in walking distance, and there's probably like 500. And I think that those are the really hard lessons. Is a lot of those leases that you signed before the pandemic, or leases that you signed at the beginning of the pandemic, or whatever, day one, we're renegotiating our original lease.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're 10 years in, so we had to renegotiate that. There's 10-year lease, and so there's always that stuff where it's like, oh man, I wish I knew that better or differently, or whatever it might be.
And leases are a hot topic right now. I mean, you mentioned 10-year leases. A lot of breweries hitting that mark right now, and they went into areas where they got low rent. Now they've often helped make those areas, really desirable. And now the landlord's like, look, we're going to charge you a lot more for this. What tips do you have for other brewers facing similar situations?
I mean, I think it's that what's your relationship with your landlord? I think that's a big one. But I know Jay Wakefield got priced out of his own place in Wynwood, and that one comes to mind. But that happens in a lot of places. Breweries sort of open on the wrong side of the tracks at times, and then all of a sudden you're 10 years later, it's not that bad a place. It's nice, and your rent was $5,000, now it's $15,000. And I can't say that we're lucky enough that we can weather some of these increases, but I know our landlord bought our place for like $50,000 in 1985. And I'm like, oh God, we pay this off like every month. You know what I mean? Like, not a little bit of hyperbole, but like, you're just like, this is crazy. And you sometimes I just have to take a step back and be like, I have a good business that can handle this. We'll be okay. But the only advice I would give is having those conversations years before you need to. Our Rockefeller Center lease is I think 5 and 5, and we've already started renegotiating our second 5. So it's having open conversations and being like, this is where we are. Where do you expect? Also be open to, creative ways. We used to be like, we're never signing a percentage rent. Now we're like, okay, like, what is the percentage rent? What can we do? Like, what's the TI money? What can we do if we're going into an area that needs some help, or an area that will bring people into? What is the landlord going to help us out with? I think it's having those open dialogues with them has been really helpful for us.
So looking at your location, I want to go down that again. You were raised in DC. You went to school in New York. When it comes to selecting the locations you all want to expand to, what are you looking for?
Well, hopefully right now we're not expanding anymore. I'm tired. We're taking a step back. I think right now we're concentrating on what we can do better, not necessarily what we can do more, which is a big takeaway. I'd say in 2025, making each location as best as possible. But some of the learnings or how we picked places was honestly talking to consumers. We would do these mobile pop-ups the first couple of years, bring beer to Buffalo, bring beer to Rochester, bring beer to DC, wherever it might be, wherever we could get the license or a great partnership deal. We brought it, and that really showed us we showed us where people want it. We knew Rochester was probably a great location for us. We looked for probably 6, 9, 12 months, and then this brewery came for sale, and we're like, how much is that? Like, okay, I think we can afford that. And I think it was a good deal. It was, obviously I think it brewed like 300 barrels the year we bought it, and I think we do 5,000 barrels out of it. So it was a bigger test of the equipment and what's going on. But it really showed like what how we got there is we brought the beer to people. And look, now we a lot of our stuff's based on where beer is getting shipped, or what people are looking for in that sense. That's been helpful for us as well.
So let's go back to distribution for a minute, because everything you said was just really interesting. But I've talked to some breweries who they'll look at, as you just mentioned, markets to go into where people are buying their beer, where it's in stores, where people are shipping it to. So a lot of breweries have been slow to adapt distribution strategies. What mistakes do you see other breweries, potentially competitors, make, and what advice would you give them to improve their approach with regards to distribution?
Do it now. Have a conversation with distributors now. That's one thing, is that like you're not going to be able to have you're not going to be able to have a conversation with a distributor when you need it. Like if you're like, oh shit, I have 100 cases or 500 cases of beer that I need to sell that didn't sell through the tap room, and it needs to go in distro, and you're like, who am I going to partner with? That is not the time to be having a conversation. The time of the conversation is now. Talking to a couple different distributors. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Talk to a couple distributors, talk to all of them, and really test them of what they think your brand can do, what they think you can do, what they can do for your brand. But I really cannot stress start having the conversations now. Don't do it too late. I've literally talked to 2 breweries that are closing in the last 2 days that both, I'm like, you have a strong brand. What happened? I'm like, why aren't you distributing their beer? Like, well, we had this like sort of handshake agreement with this person, and they're not moving what they're supposed to. And you're like, why didn't you have this conversation 9 months ago, a year ago? Like, you need to have a real contract and a real like conversation of like, hey, I need you to move X number of barrels a month or X number a year. Like, it's just, you suffer for it because you didn't plan. What is it?
That's because they didn't have your brother working for them to help with the contracts.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I will say most of the conversations started because they came to the tap rooms, and they came and they've been fans for a long time. I know Other Half is in an amazing position with a brand that is really strong. But no matter your brand, there's probably a little market for you. If you need to move some beer, there's people who are willing to look for it and want that at their restaurant or bottle shop or whatever it might be.
So you've been doing this over a decade now. You've seen a lot happen in the industry, Andrew. What other, quality pitfalls do you see today, and what should breweries be doing different on this front?
I think our QC team is actually kind of mean. I will
say that, kind of mean.
Kind of mean. We're very harsh about our beer. We want it to be better and better, and that's something that we take a huge amount of pride in, is how to make our product better. With 3 locations brewing beer now, pretty good numbers of beer. How do you make sure that your quality is well? And I think we are tasting beer all the time to make sure that it is of quality, and we are not shy to throw away beer. That's one thing that I think you have to. Quality is the number one thing above all else. If you don't have quality and don't have a good product, then no one's going to buy it. If you don't have pride in it, no one else is going to have pride in it. And I think that's something that we really, really push. Yeah, obviously there's some things go wrong, but being able to take a step back and like, that beer has diacetyl. Like, we cannot release it. Where did that go? Go get it. Don't let it be distributed. And we've had that conversation many times.
So not everybody has a quality team. Not everybody has a lab. What are little things? I mean, I know you're not in the brew house, but little things you recommend they do to
We
start
taste every beer that you make. I taste, me and another two guys taste every beer we make.
You're still tasting every beer you make.
I still taste every beer we make.
I love that.
I think right now it's probably like 95 to 100%, but like a guy I trust does it. He was like, this is what was canned today here. This was canned in DC. On Mondays, we do what was canned in Finger Lakes. We literally try 99% of what we make. And we're very, very harsh and we're very open with it. And we're like, and I think sometimes to a fault, but we're always willing to be like, hey, this wasn't what we were shooting for. And a lot of the times it's like, what were we going for with this beer? It's not hoppy enough. It's not clean enough. It tastes too light. And then, a lot of times when you start, when you itch that scratch, they're like, well, we didn't hit our numbers in the brew house. And you're like, okay, so why did this continue on? And you got to be like, okay, let's hold this. Let's hold this for a week and see if it gets better or we have to deal with it. So a lot of times it's just being open with ourselves and trying to figure out what the best way it is. We do have a true quality control, like science people that test the beer for that thing, but nothing beats what your mouth says.
And so you didn't always have that team.
No. We've only had it in the last couple of years. And so I think the big thing is, as a small brewery, taste what you make. Even if you're the owner and you're like, okay, I wasn't there when they brewed this and it got tapped when I wasn't there, I'd be like, make sure you go to the tap room and try it. Because it's also good to, for the staff to see you trying it. It's good for the staff to be like, oh, he cares enough to try these beers and then to give an opinion about it. Be like, hey, this was great. I really enjoyed this. I think that's really something that, we obviously are sometimes a little negative. But when we see something that's a banger and we're like, yo, dude, that was awesome. Great job. And I think it's really important to give feedback both ways.
Oh, yeah, I agree to that. So pricing is a hot topic and a challenge right now. There's inflation, there's tariffs, economic pressures are affecting both breweries and the consumers. How does Other Half navigate pricing pressures while keeping that quality you speak of, but also profitability?
Pricing is interesting. What I said to a lot of our forecasting was really about, getting good prices on cans, getting good prices on your grain, getting good prices on your hops. I think, you mention a lot of pressures that are, deal with like getting it to your door, but take a step back. There are a lot less breweries than there were a year ago. So there might be a little bit of a glut of Citra. There might be too many cans forecasted. So what can you do to push down your pricing a little bit? And also, I think it's seeing your COGS, seeing your labor, and then taking a hard look at what you need, what you can cut, what you can fix, what you can do. A lot of what we do is being like, what is the real cost of making that beer? I think that's, a lot of people just do willy-nilly pricing. They're like, well, my competitor does $220 for a half barrel, so I'm going to do, I think mine's a little bit better, so I'll do $240. That's not the way you price beer. You got to be like, that half barrel cost me $37 of the goods inside of it. It cost me this much labor. It cost me this much rent. Know your numbers. And I think that's something that will, we said, you're talking about like, inflation and things like that. But the real thing is like, know your numbers, because you might have cheaper rent than somebody else. So you can get away with charging X number and somebody else might pay $10,000 rent. You might have 2 brewers and somebody might have 4 brewers. So really know those numbers well, and that will help you navigate those inflation and the pressures we feel about making that next, how much we can charge per ounce.
Let's go a little bit deeper in knowing your numbers. What are some of your favorite key performance indicators, KPIs that you like to look at?
I mean, I think we amateurize a lot across the brewery. So we separate breweries by location. So we have 3 breweries that we actually make product on. We have Canandaigua, Brooklyn, and DC. And so it's separating that labor out. What our true cost at each location is something that we really look to. So that's all the labor, that's all the rent, that's all the ingredients into that one number. And it's like, okay, if we made 1,000 barrels and it cost us $10,000 to make those barrels, then it's $100. The true cost is $100 for that barrel. And then what can we charge on top of that to make sure that we're making money as ownership and as good fiduciary duties of our as owners. I think the biggest number, there's a push and pull. You need somebody else in the room to talk to you about it. Cause a lot of times in the tap room, you're like, okay, your labor is this, and you're like, can I get lower? And you're like, I don't think I can. And then you're like, okay, I only have 3 bartenders in that day. One opens at 12, one's a mid shift when we get busy, and then they stay till the busy times end, and one's a closer. Like, I can't get any lower than that. And so it's just having someone checking you and making sure that you can push and pull and see what you can do. I think, it's not necessarily, it's what numbers are important to your brewery, are the most important ones. But again, to me, it's just, that it's some of those minutia numbers of labor, of what your credit card bill was, where this money went is a big one. We really look at what we spend. That's a really tough one, because I think that's when you're spending money that comes directly out of your bottom line. And so it's like, did we really need whatever that was? That's a big number for us. So and then there's one other number that we deal with, which is, since we have 3 breweries and we have overhead and we have office staff, it's that number, everything time per barrel. So that's our true cost per barrel is X number. And we know we have to make more than that on average to keep the lights on. And that number has been very, very important for us.
That's an important number there.
Yeah. That's so basically that's like our true cost. That's everything about
what do you call that number? It's like a
true cost.
True cost.
It's just true cost. It's just really what it is. And that's like that's to pay everybody. That's for my salaries. That's for our driver salaries. That's for the internet hookups. It's for everything. And that's something that it's sort of a catch-all as well. So it's basically like whatever we spent and whatever we made, this is the number from any source, from everywhere. So it's just a big old catch-all of everything, and it really shows you, okay, cool. If it costs me with all my labor $300 per barrel per barrel, I need to make sure I'm making at least $301 so I can be in business next year. And those are real numbers that we didn't really have up until a couple years ago.
So Andrew, you and I both talk really fast. We've done rapid fire on a ton of different talking points today. But, some of the things that Other Half has seen success with right now, some of the things that's giving you challenges right now, they might not be what you get up in the morning for every day. So like you personally, what's exciting you most about what you're doing right now?
What excites me is what's next. How to talk to the consumers as we move forward. A lot of the numbers from the Brewers Guild and the Brewers conferences are all like negative. But I think it's trying to find, whether it's Other Half or whatever brewery you have, it's trying to figure out what's out there that you can do better and what's out there that you can make some money on. I think that's, what I really gets me out of bed a little bit, but also like just gets me excited. Like, what can we do? There's a certain amount of cockiness you need to have to open up a brewery or be an entrepreneur whatsoever. You need to think you do something better than anybody else. And I think that you have to keep that entrepreneurial mindset. You have to keep, what do I do better every single day to make my employees better, my team better, my business better, whatever it might be. And I think that's something that we really push. And you really have to concentrate on, because, as your business stagnates or as there's a turn in the industry, the ones that move quickly, the ones that really see some open space, that see some white space that they can capitalize on, are going to be the ones that will be around in another couple of years. And I don't ever want to, I always say to my teams, like, it's sort of like, don't make passive mistakes. You can make aggressive mistakes, but don't be passive. And I sort of take that mentality, like that fail forward sort of mentality. Like, you might have done something wrong, but that might have let you down the right path. And but doing nothing is the thing that scares me more than anything.
Yeah, definitely. So as you continue to innovate, like, what do you want to try next? Without giving away all your secrets, is there anything you hope becomes, let's say, a thing in our industry that you could dive into?
I think the one thing that that Delta 9 category is really interesting to us. I think just what beer is going to evolve to. I think there's different styles of beer. Sort of like I think there's a little bit of a retro trend coming back, whether that's a West Coast IPA or hopefully that's not brown ales, but who knows? I think there is like a big push to sort of what
you don't
what
like brown ale? Come on.
They don't sell that well, but what was moving 15, 20 years ago is sort of making a comeback. And so seeing those trends, I think Other Half is really trying to capitalize on sort of like smaller things and making sure our website experience is better, making sure our, ordering cans to go experience is better, making sure that, we have what we're working on right now is a shipping club. People really ask for that, and we're like, it's sort of hard in the back end, but we're like, okay, let's figure this out. And things like that is, again, it's all back to how do you make it easier to get beer into people's hands, or whatever product they want.
Yeah, making it easy. So for you, like, you're spending so much time thinking about how Other Halves can continue to see success, but what do you do to completely disconnect and balance your life so you get some time away from the business? Is there anything that you do? Or are you Other Half 24/7, 365?
I am not Other Half 24/7, 365. I have two great daughters, and I have an amazing wife. So they always help me set it back to neutral in a way, or drive me crazy. It depends on the day. But I think, I think taking a step back and relaxing a little bit. I love a good shitty TV show. And
what are you watching right now?
I'm watching that Reacher show on Amazon. My parents love all Jack Reacher books, so it like makes me be able to talk to my parents about something. So that's nice. I also have I've as I said, I work with my brother, but I also have two other brothers and a sister. There's 5 of us, 5 kids.
Are you sure?
Yeah, yeah. Never really sure. I always, but it's always nice having family time and taking a step away. I think that's really important. And I think that's been a little bit of a savior. But also, I think what's also been great. I'm also part of a couple small business groups. Share your struggles with other people. I think entrepreneurs also a lot of times feel that they're failing because of their own by themselves. I have one of my good friends has physical therapy offices, and another one's like a private chef, and I think they all have different problems, and their businesses have completely changed as well. And it's just talking to people that have a different. I have a friend who owns a salsa company, and so it's figuring out some other like-minded people that might not be in beer, but they have their own struggles, and it's nice commiserating a little bit to be like, hey, this fucking sucks sometimes, and it's nice having that camaraderie. And I think that's really, really important to know that it's not just craft beer that's hard right now. The world is a different place than it was. Things are changing and things are evolving, but it's a great opportunity as well.
Yeah, it's so important to have that support group of like-minded people from other industries we can be around, because not only can we be there for one another, but we can learn from each other as well. And I think if we just keep learning from people like us in the industry, we're just going to recycle a lot of ideas. And having those people from outside is so important right now.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the stuff. When we talk about taproom activations, you're like, what are other people doing to get people in their restaurant? What are people doing to get in their bar? We don't have to put up karaoke, but what can we do to in other industries? And I think having those conversations and being open with what other people are doing is really great. And having, I think, and then at the end of the day, we make beer. So it's nice to have a beer with somebody and just talk, whether it's somebody who's a professional in marketing and another thing, or somebody who runs something else. It's always great to learn from somebody else.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree more on that one. I know your little ones are probably ready to have dinner with you shortly. So I've got one more question for you, Andrew. If people have listened the past hour to us talk about all aspects of the industry, what's one thing you hope they take away from this conversation?
Proactivity, to be honest. Really, really, whether it's your distribution partnerships or your tap rooms or something that feels off you, I think no matter what, talking about it is really, really important. Talking about it, getting ahead of it, having those tough conversations. I know my personality is terrible at having tough conversations. And I really try to, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs have that. Knowing yourself, that's a big thing. Knowing what your tendencies are, and trying to get people that cover them and help them. And also, keep pushing. I think that was a lot right there, but I think
that's damn good advice. Proactive is hugely important. Well, Andrew, I really appreciate this conversation with you. It's great to see you. For anyone looking to follow you or get in touch or see what Other Half's doing, where can they learn more?
Obviously there's always the Instagram at Other Half Brewing NYC, or the 7 other ones we have for locations. You can always shoot me an email. It's just andrew@otherhalfbrewing.com. But I really appreciate people listening, and really appreciate if I can help anybody with this. I think it's nice to know that I've been doing this for 11, 12 years now, that we have a little bit of opinion and we have an angle, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to support.
Where do the years go? Andrew, thanks for sharing your insight today, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.